I just got out of theaters from seeing The Smashing Machine on the big screen, and I have a lot that I want to talk about for this film, guys. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the movie review. Let's go. Smashing Machine is a biography film directed by Bennie, Safdie, and inside of this film we see MMA fighter Mark Kerr reach the peak of his career but face personal hardships along the way. Now, with me being a huge fan of A24, but also MMA as a sport in general, this easily became one of my most anticipated films of the year. I couldn't have been more excited to go out and see this film in theaters and see The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, take on such a serious role in his career. Finally, after all of this time, it built a lot of hype up for this film for me personally. And while this isn't a perfect movie, there is a lot to like here. So let's go ahead and get into my positives for The Smashing Machine. And for my first positive with this film, let's just go ahead and start with Dwayne Johnson himself. All right, he is of course playing the role of Mark Kerr inside of this film, and I thought he did a hell of a job at it because his accuracy and depiction to Mark Kerr is fantastic. The way they managed to make him look exactly like Mark Kerr from that time, you could put pictures side by side of them and they look damn near identical. I thought that was amazing. I have no idea how they achieved this effect, but it did seem like they digitally altered his face a little bit to make him appear more like him in certain scenes and certain shots that you got inside of this film. And it was just such a raw and authentic depiction of a real person, a real human being. This movie dives deep into Mark Kerr's personal addictions throughout his life and throughout his career, you know, his toxic relationship that he had with his girlfriend at the time, who later on became his wife in the future, and just all of the highs and lows throughout this particular part of Mark Kerr's life. And if you're a fan of MMA, you've probably heard the saying, the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. Well, that's exactly what you get to see here with the character of Mark Kerr, and I just loved how authentic it felt on the big screen. Now, I couldn't be more happy that The Rock took this role. I couldn't be more proud of him for taking on this challenge and executing it in the way that he did, in the way that it comes across on the screen here. And my respect for him just goes up to another level completely. Now, let's go ahead and talk about other positives inside of this film, such as Emily Blunt. She is playing the character of Dawn Staples, and this is the girlfriend character for Mark Kerr throughout this period of his lifetime. Every role Emily Blunt's in, she does an amazing job, and it's no different here inside of this film. I absolutely loved her performance as Dawn. Very similar to The Rock's performance. It felt real and authentic. This movie held nothing back when it came to the dark side of their relationship, and I loved seeing that portrayed here. Now let's talk about another positive that I had with this movie, and it would have to be its depiction of the sport of MMA in general, because I thought they did a great job here showcasing what it's like to live the life of a fighter, showcasing the toll that the sport takes on the mind, body, and spirit of the fighter, and just getting to see organizations like Pride FC and the UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Championship, back then in a time where this sport was still relatively new and not too many people knew about it, and if they did, a lot of people didn't approve of it. And just getting to see MMA as it was in the 90s and early 2000s, I thought that was a lot of fun. I loved the accuracy here and the respect that it had for the sport that it had on display throughout this entire film, and of course what was the main career for Mark Kerr at this point in his life. And that was all just amazing to see. Now, with that being said, that pretty much wraps up my positives for this part of the review. Now let's go ahead and move into my negatives for The Smashing Machine. And for my first negative with this film, I want to talk about its depiction of the fights themselves, because I thought that was a real weak point here with this movie. As someone who actively watches this sport every single weekend that it's on, I found it very disappointing that the fights didn't feel real and authentic as much as the rest of this film did. It felt like they really shied away from a lot of the depictions of violence that this sport has, and like they were phoning in some of the performances when it came to the combat perspective of this movie. The choreography in general just felt lacking when it came to this area of the film. The action part of this sport was just not fully on display, and I do wish that we got to see more of that inside of this movie. Now let's move on to another negative that I had with this film. This is actually going to be my final negative in general with this movie, and it's the fact that it leaves you wanting wanting more in the end. By the end of this film, it felt like, okay, I liked a lot of what we touched on here, but I wish we just went into it just a little more, especially when it came to the emotional moments inside of this movie, which there's a lot of them. It felt like it was still leaving something off of the table by the end of this film, and I just wish we got that. However, there is a lot more to like here than to dislike, so let's go ahead and move into my overall review for The Smashing Machine. Look guys, overall this was a great movie. I expected more on the MMA side. I thought that was more so what the movie was going to be about, but it wasn't that, and I'm okay with that. It was more about his personal relationships throughout his life, the personal struggles with addiction and with his girlfriend that he had throughout his life, and it really honed in and touched on those areas more so than his career in the sport of mixed martial arts, which I found that okay. I just wasn't expecting it based on the trailers that we got. However, I am happy that I do feel like I know Mark Kerr as a person more so after watching this film than before I went into seeing this movie. I love how much time we spend in Japan inside of this film and how much they made it feel like, again, early 90s to 2000s Japan at that time. They even like seemingly reworked some of the streets inside of Japan to make it feel like that time, while also hinting towards the Pride FC organization that was set in Japan and how corrupt they were at times, because if you don't know, Pride FC at this time was ran by the Yakuza in Japan. So there was a lot of shady dealings when it came to how they dealt with their fighters, and you definitely got to see that a bit inside of this film. We had fun cameos like former UFC fighter Ryan Bader playing the best friend character Mark Coleman, who was again another real fighter. So a fighter getting to play a fighter, I thought that was a little funny there. It was cool to see their inclusion inside of this film, while also including Boss Rutan. If you don't know Boss Rutan, go do your research on him. He's been a character inside the world of MMA for a very long time, and getting to see him essentially just play himself here because Mark Kerr trained under Boss Rutan, I thought that was a lot of fun. I love this movie's authenticity and respect for the sport of MMA and for these organizations at the time, though I thought the depiction of the fighting itself could have been a lot better. And the main standout, main highlight from this movie was of course The Rock and Emily Blunt playing Mark Kerr and Don Staples. They held up this entire film. Damn near every scene involves these two characters and all of the emotions present in their personal relationship. I thought that was fantastically displayed here. So overall guys, if I had to rate this film, I would go ahead and give The Smashing Machine a 8 out of 10. It gets the 8 out of 10. I thought this was a great movie. I would highly recommend you support this film at the box office in theaters. Go see it full price if you have to, because it's an amazing experience. I'm glad A24 has another great film under their belt. I absolutely love this film studio, and a lot of my favorite films come out under their banner, so I'm glad they got another one here with The Smashing Machine. And with that being said guys, those are my thoughts on this film. I'd love to know your thoughts on this film down in the comment section down below. If you don't know what we do here on Demigod, we do film, TV, and anime based content. So if you're interested in this type of content, in the right place, hit subscribe, hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. I'll catch you in the next one guys. Peace.